Buenos días, gracias por seguir a Sattwa. Hoy día tengo el honor de presentar a un ser extraordinario. Todavía tengo mariposas en el estómago. Él es un instructor de yoga, es autor y también conferencista. Es un erudito en todo lo que se habla de yoga, sánscrito, en fin, como siempre digo en todas mis introducciones para el Sattva, para el Entre, disculpen, me encanta que sea el invitado el que nos cuente un poco más de su vida. Él es Eddie Stern y estoy muy feliz de darle la bienvenida en este espacio. Hi Eddie, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Eddie, to begin with the questions.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit, what is the practice that you do?
Well, I have a practice which is made up of the main portions of what you would call a yoga sadhana or yoga discipline. And that is, I get up early in the morning and I begin the day with, first, after I've had my shower and everything, I read from some spiritual text. And then I do meditation and some puja, some ritual. And then after that, I do my asana and pranayama practice. And then from there, I begin my teaching day. And then later on in the afternoon, I might do a little something again, usually a little bit of meditation, some either yoga asanas or exercise. And that will be sort of, the routine of the day. And then there's also volunteer work that I do for different organizations who are addressing different types of hardships that people encounter in the world. So when I first started doing yoga in the 1980s, the part of yoga that was most emphasized was doing seva or doing service. And so in some way you need to find how you can be of service to society, whether it's animal society or human society or nature society. And that's one of the most important parts of yoga. So as a teacher, I'm trained in a couple of different things. One of the main practices I teach is Ashtanga yoga. I teach it maybe a little bit differently than you might see in most of the Ashtanga yoga orthodoxy these days. There's some ways that I've deviated over the years to make it a little bit more of a gentle or forgiving or friendly practice than the way it's been marketed. And I also do yoga therapy and pranayama practices that are not part of the Ashtanga yoga tradition. And that's also a very, very big interest of mine.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Ashtanga because here in South America, well, we practice a lot of yoga. You can find different type of yogas, and Ashtanga was, I love what you said that you deviated and you have like a more loving practice, because sometimes Ashtanga is associated with ego, the postures, the difficult postures, the very strong bodies, and then some people try not to go there because it seems like it's not yoga, right? It's not union, it's not spiritual. And I love what you just said. And also, why did you choose Ashtanga? Or what else can you talk about Ashtanga? And then people here in South America and Latin America can know more about that.
Well, I'm not a good salesperson for any brand of yoga. I was doing a style of yoga called Shivananda yoga before I began doing Ashtanga. And I was doing a lot of yoga because that was what I decided to dedicate my life to when I was about 19 or 20. I thought this is the thing for me. And that's before yoga was a profession. It's just that I knew this was for me. Yeah. So I did the Shivananda yoga for some years, and I was doing it a couple of times a day, like Shivananda yoga prescribes. But I also was doing some other things. I tried, the Kundalini yoga of Yogi Bhajan and Dharma Mitra and Kripalu yoga and all these things. And there was not as much branding of yoga then. You just did the yogas that you wanted to do. And all the branding really started later. When I was in India, which is where I learned most of my yoga, I met the teacher of Ashtanga Yoga, Pattabhi Jois, in 1991. And when I started learning his practice, I felt that it was a very good practice. It just brought a lot of elements together that I hadn't experienced yoga in that way before. It was hard to do, but there was something I enjoyed about the challenge. But I was young, I was 23, 24, 25, that age bracket. But, and I've said this before, I didn't find the community of people that were practicing to be spiritual. I didn't find there to be anything spiritual about the yoga itself, or about the atmosphere that was being created. I just thought the yoga practice was good, and that's why I decided to do it. But there was always something missing from it for me, and that was the side that connected you to spirit. Some people said, oh, just to get into your breathing is enough. But for me, that wasn't enough, because yoga comes from a vast tradition within the Hindu culture, which ties in a lot of different elements. Pranayama, belief in the divine, worship of the divine, again, service, all these different types of things. So even while I was in India studying with this teacher, I was also always studying Sanskrit, or studying ritual, or going to temples, or finding other ways to make the spiritual side of my life feel full. Because the yoga itself was not giving me that sense of fullness. So I think that every system has its flaws or its drawbacks. And, systems are not meant to be perfect. They're just meant to exist so you have something to do. And most people who are embarking on a spiritual practice, they want to know, well, what should I do? What are the practical steps of how I need to change my life? And so a system of yoga is going to give you some practical steps of how you should start making change. And here's a practice you could do. Here are 20 asanas to do every day and 3 breathing practices. And now you know what to do. But at a certain point, you might start feeling that you need to look a little bit deeper, and that you need to begin expressing more fully the parts of yourself that a system is not responsible for. A system is only responsible for giving you a format to get you started. But then at a certain point of your life, you might need to become unsystematized so you can experience pureness in yourself and in other people. If you become too beholden to any one system, and you think it's the only real system, or the best system, or the system that everyone should follow, then you look at all other spiritual practitioners from other disciplines with the eye of judgment. These people are not doing a practice which is as good as mine, so therefore their yoga is inferior, their meditation is inferior, their mantras are not as powerful. You see a lot of that in the Western yoga communities. In fact, you see that in India as well too. So, that's how I view yoga in general. But Ashtanga itself is, as a practice, is very physically oriented, even though it is supposed to be a spiritual practice. It's very physically oriented, it's demanding, and that's okay. It's good to do something challenging with our physical body, because that's how we grow. That's how we get stronger. That's how we build endurance, how we build confidence. We can get over certain fears that we have. We can learn things about ourselves. If we never challenge ourselves, there's never any growth. So this is one of the positive things about this practice, is that it is challenging and provides a lot of opportunity for growth. There are several different sequences that are of increasing difficulty. The primary sequence itself is quite difficult. Most people can do the sun salutations and standing poses and a variety of the asanas, but not everyone will be able to do all of the asanas in primary series, because there are a lot of lotus positions and complicated twists and deep bends and things like that. But I would say there's something for just about everyone in the primary series. Not necessarily everyone, because no system is for everyone. But there's something that most people can access within the practice.
Well, I think Ashtanga, because I have been watching some of your videos and things, and it is true that the primary practice that you were talking about, it lasts like 90 minutes.
Yes, it lasts 90 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, and I've seen some of the asanas and are very, very difficult, but at the same time, like you say, right, it challenges you, and also it makes you trust in yourself, your body, you trust yourself. And I think yoga is not just what you do, the asanas, it's everything involved, because whatever you do when you're practicing yoga or when you are in your mat, it's what you are normally every day, right? It's like when you go to the mat and you start your practice, you always, before that, at least I do that, I ask, what do I want this moment to reveal to me, right? Why am I here? What are my difficulties? If something goes wrong in one of the postures, not wrong, but I'm not able to perform, like every day, I ask myself what is going on. How is my balance? Why am I not in balance today? And things like that. And I think, like you said, yoga is more than just to the asanas and the poses and the asanas.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. Then you've been practicing since you were very young, 22, 24, 25 years old. And you also study Sanskrit. I've seen some of the interviews with Deepak Chopra, with Dr. Deepak Chopra, my teacher, right? Mm-hmm. And you talked about that you are fluent in Sanskrit, that you study Sanskrit. And that's amazing also, because to understand all these practices I do Ayurveda, you need to learn from where they come from. Yes. The Sanskrit, I know a little, just a little, but I can imagine being able to study Sanskrit, right?
Yeah, I still study. I'm definitely not fluent. I have a teacher who I study with. He lives in India, and we do our classes on Zoom just about once a week or so. So yeah, it's a huge undertaking to learn a language, and Sanskrit is quite complicated.
You dedicated your life, like you said, right, to yoga, to Sanskrit, to learn all this amazing knowledge. Can you talk briefly, Eddie, about the 8 limbs of yoga?
So the 8 limbs of yoga are primarily the teachings of Patanjali. Mm-hmm. There are, in the Hindu tradition, in the yogic traditions, they like to categorize things to give order and structure. So again, it's the idea of, okay, if I'm doing a spiritual practice, what should I do? How do I begin? And so the counting of things gives you structure to know what to do. In the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, where we see Ashtanga Yoga, there are other yogas that come too. There's Kriya Yoga, which is made up of only 3 things. This is Tapa, Swadhyaya, and Ishvara Pranidhana. And then later you see those three things are encompassed also in the 8 limbs of yoga, the 8 things that you do. In earlier Upanishads and these spiritual texts of Hinduism, you see the Shadanga yoga, the 6 limbs, where there are certain things which are not included. And in other texts, you see that the 8 limbs might be slightly different. For example, Patanjali begins with yama and niyama, which are the ways that we relate to others and the ways that we relate to ourselves. They're not really laws or codes, but they're vows. Patanjali lists 5 of each of those, but in other sources, they'll list 10 of the yamas and niyamas. So the 8 limbs of yoga are going to be a category of different types of things you can do to progressively expand your field of consciousness. And they're going to include the ways that we behave, the ways that we use our body, which is asanas, the way that we do things to our nervous system through the breathing, which is pranayama, the way that we let our sense organs not be swayed by the objects of the world, believing them to be real, which is pratyahara. And then we have the process of moving our concentration inward, making our awareness fluid and steady and consistent, and then practicing deep states of absorption, where even the idea of someone who is meditating disappears because we become so absorbed into the object of our meditation, which is the dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, or the 3 inner or antaranga sadhana, the inner practices. And that's dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. And all of those lead towards kaivalya, which is the final distinction between that which doesn't change, consciousness, and that which does change, which is nature. And in seeing that distinction, then consciousness, which was trapped in nature, becomes freed from it and dwells in its own being. And that is the culmination of yoga. That's the freedom of yoga.
Amazing. Thank you very much for that, Eddie. Thank you. Eddie, you also are an author, right? You have a book that is amazing. I'm reading your book. It's tell a little bit about one simple thing. Your book.
This came about from primarily my interest in the Western views of the nervous system, and noticing how yoga practices seem to very directly work on those mechanisms. I had been collaborating in scientific research for a number of years, and noticed that even when I did very similar protocols for the scientific research, they were still giving positive benefits. So we did a research study on pre-hypertension in African Americans who were middle age, and saw that from this one protocol, their cardiovascular measures got better, their hypertension improved, got better, their blood pressure went down. And then I used a very similar protocol for a study on children in high school and seeing if yoga in comparison to gym would improve grade point average. And we saw a 2.7% rise in grade point for the kids who had yoga over those who just had gym. And I thought, well, how can yoga be doing these two separate things? Like on the one hand, it improves blood pressure. On the other hand, it makes you apparently smarter or better to, answer questions at least correctly. But everyone was doing the same basic thing. It wasn't like a medication where here's something for a headache and here's something for acid and reflux in your stomach. If you take a medication for acid reflux, it doesn't make your headache better. If you take a medicine for headache, it doesn't make your acid reflux better. In medicine, you need separate things for separate problems. But in yoga, you can use the same thing and it helps many problems. And I even observed, and many people observe, that if you look at people in a yoga class, someone might be there for a spiritual reason. Some might have stress. One person might have back pain. Another might have digestive problem. Another might have trouble sleeping. They all do the same practice and they start to feel a little better. And I thought, well, how is that possible? What is yoga affecting that makes that happen? So that's what the book is about.
Oh, it's wonderful. I started your book and it's amazing. Yeah, and what you say, that people go for different reasons to practice yoga, right? And all of us receive the benefit that we need in that moment. And that amazes me.
It is, yeah.
So yoga, it's sometimes with myself, I have a headache and I start practicing. I do instead of like not doing my practice that day, I do my practice. And many times my headache is gone.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy. I don't need to take anything. I just did my practice, because sometimes when you hurt, it's the same for me when I have I have some problems in my back. And some days it's hard for me because I have pain, and I practice. I do my yoga anyways, and I feel much better because you have, the flexibility. Your spine, it's flexible, and you move better. That's the magic of yoga, and also because your nervous system, if you're too stressed, and you become, peaceful, calm. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's why I want to go further and further, learning more and more about yoga, because
Yeah.
it amazes me. Yeah, and we are here in Latin America. It's we still have, even that is practice, and lots of people are hooked with yoga. Lots of people also have these issues with religion, right? Because Catholics, oh my goodness, you are chanting to a different God, and some people have that issue with yoga, still. But I think it's getting less and less and less.
Well, I understand that. If you feel a particular way towards your vision of divinity, then someone is chanting or praying to other types of divinity that might go in opposition to your beliefs or different than your beliefs, then I can understand people saying, no, that for this religion, it's not okay to practice this other one at the same time. Because, for people who are mature, their mind won't be disturbed by it. But for other people, maybe they might get confused. And also, I think it's very important for people who are Westerners to remember that when they are chanting, Sri Ganeshaya Namaha, or to Durga, or Hanuman, or Shiva, that these are the ancient gods of India. And they are as real today to the Hindu people as Jesus is and Mother Mary is to the Catholics.
Exactly.
And as real as Muhammad is to the followers of Islam, and Yahweh to the Jews. These are absolutely 100% religious personalities or religious identities. They're not ideas, they're not just cosmic energies, but these are the devas or the divine beings of Hinduism. And a lot of people who are repeating these mantras don't realize that. And now Hindus feel that anyone can chant these mantras and pray to these divine beings. And so I do, because the Hindus have said you can, but I do it with the recognition that, yes, this is the real, living, deep, sacred tradition, and not to objectify it, not to turn it into a fetish, but it is the practicing of someone else's religion. Now, when you find mantras like you'll find in Primordial Sound or TM, these are mantras that are symbolic of or represent cosmic energies that uphold order and things like that in the universe. So they are from the Hindu tradition, but later parts of it, like the Tantric tradition, which was a little bit against the orthodoxy of earlier Hinduism. And these simple syllables are, though they are connected to the deities in certain ways, they're also not connected in the same way because they are non-symbolic sounds that have their own particular energy. So that's slightly different. A photo of Ganesha, the word Ganesha, is a symbolic sound for a symbol, for a form, for a name, for a presence. But some of the bija mantras are non-symbolic, just to help affect a shift in consciousness, which is what these meditations do. So it's good to understand all these things, and to know what tradition and what history am I engaging with, and what level do I want to engage in it with. There are some people who are not Christian, but they find a lot of solace to go into a church and pray because it's a house of God. But they don't need to be Christian to go in there, and no one is going to tell them that you have to be Christian in order to come in here. Some people even believe in Jesus without being Christian. I do. I'm Jewish. And I love going into churches. So in the same way, it's okay for us to go into the big house of yoga and do these things, just to remember, I'm in someone else's house here, and I'm going to treat it with respect. So that's my opinion.
Well, that's my opinion too, Eddie, because for me, since I was very little, I thought that I can find that God, like we said, right? Everywhere. It's just that I go to a mosque, with the same respect that I can go to a Catholic church or go to Shiva temple. It is just the respect, and I feel that it's everywhere, that this energy, this high energy is everywhere. And that's what it's important for me, right? Like you say. Well, Eddie, we are almost at the end of the interview. I'm sorry, I think I took more of that of your time. But can you please let us know how we can practice with you? Because sometimes Eddie's turn, it's like so far away, we cannot practice with him. And now I know that we can practice every Tuesday, Thursday, with an application, right? With you in live on the internet, on Instagram, and also you have the 365 application, and you also have the breathing application. And tell us, and also, whoever follow the Chopra Center, they also have an application where you have breath work for balance. Tell us a little bit, how can we start practicing with you?
Well, thanks for asking. I teach live classes on Zoom. Right now for August, I'm just teaching 3 days a week. But normally I'm teaching, 4 or 5 days a week on Zoom in the morning time, 7 a.m. New York City time. And those classes are by donation. So you can go to my website, eddiestern.com, click on any of the classes that you want to come to, and you go directly into the Zoom room. So you just click on the link right before the class. It's very easy. And yes, I use Instagram and I post yoga things on there on occasion, some little yoga sequences. I like doing that. I am on the Chopra app. My breathing app is free. That's downloadable for Android or iOS. And Yoga 365, of course, has Spanish subtitles, I believe.
Yes.
And you can do that. And I'm also about to start doing some Instagram posts that are going to have Spanish subtitles as well.
Wonderful.
Because of, there's a Spanish edition of my book, One Simple Thing. Are you reading it in Spanish or English?
English. I'm reading in English, but I know you have in Spanish. You have.
There's a Spanish edition. And now because of my trips to Buenos Aires and Mexico and Yoga Woman and some of my students in South America, we have a lot of Spanish speaking people coming on to the platform. So I'll start doing some Instagram posts with Spanish subtitles as well. But I'm easy to find, you know, through my website, you can find everything that I'm doing. And I enjoy teaching the live classes several times a week, get to connect with people nicely. Yeah,
it's amazing. I connect sometimes with you at 7:30, 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, and we do on Instagram twice a week, we do the Ganesha Mantra Japa at 6:30 in the morning on Instagram, Tuesday and Thursday.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Eddie. It's been amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I hope one day you can come to Chile or, you know, to South America and just give us, you know, your all your expertise in Ashtanga and everything that you do and everything that you teach.
I hope I can come one day too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eddie. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias a todos por haber estado en esta entrevista y por seguir a Sattwa. Y bueno, vamos así continuar trayendo invitados, más invitados y muchísimas gracias. No me queda otra cosa que decir que Namasté. Namaste.
Muchas gracias. Adiós.
Gracias. Adiós, Eddie. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.